Hi there, viewers. Today I'm joining a conversation with author Sherrie Todd Beshore, the author of The Crow Child and quite a lot of books that she has authored. It's a pleasure to have Sherrie on the show. Welcome on the show, Sherrie.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you featured on English literature.
Well, English sort of being my first language, yeah. We sometimes question that, right?
Yeah, that's great. So, Sherrie, could you tell us about your book, The Crow Child? What inspired you to write The Crow Child?
Well, it was actually somebody else who
Oh.
inspired me to write the book. It's about a truly unlikely superhero born with cystic fibrosis. And it came about because a young mother who had read a couple of the books from my Mosquito Creek Detective Club series,
Mm.
read to her son every night. And one of his favorite superheroes was Spider-Man.
Oh.
And one night he said, I guess I can never be a superhero because I have CF. And he said, so someone like me could never do, saving the world kind of a thing. And so she wrote to me, she said, can you write a book about a superhero who's, a sick kid? Maybe he doesn't necessarily have CF, maybe he has a heart condition or diabetes or something else. And so it took me a few years to think about this. At first, I thought about a young child's book, with cartoons and a little bug who was trying to be something else, like
Yeah.
a spider who could fly or something like that. And then through the process of uh, it's just like an evolution. So Elijah Clearwater, who is culturally half Irish and half Indigenous, and that came from about my experience with First Nations in Canada, where I grew up. So Elijah Clearwater was born with cystic fibrosis,
Oh.
and he's also part of an ancient legend. And his grandfather, who is head of the Native Council, because of his birth and the circumstances of his birth, and people read it in the book, has been watching for signs that Elijah is actually going to be another incarnation of the Crow Child.
Oh, wow.
And so 13 days before Elijah's 13th birthday, he starts having these vivid dreams. And he's also dealing with a bully at school and other issues. And so, he thinks himself it may be because he's trying to deal with this bully, but that's not what they are. And so the reader gets to see these dreams, go through the stories of the dreams and the evolution of Elijah as he discovers who else he is. And part of it, Peter, is for other kids. Like children's hospitals have
Mm.
embraced this book for their sick kids. It's kids who have medical issues as well as maybe emotional issues, like foster kids who think that they can't be superheroes and yet they already are.
Oh.
So that's how it came about.
Yeah. That sounds very great to me. And also, you've also written 24 Success Drive. For readers like me who haven't read your book, 24 Success Drive yet, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what we'd expect picking it up?
Well, for those who maybe visit my website, they find out that in a previous life I was a journalist.
Oh.
And a lot of the assignments that I got, covering, elections, politicians, and seeing some other news features firsthand, your imagination never stops. And so
Mm.
when everything's curious and you wonder, well, what are they not telling us? What else is happening? So through the years, I collected news articles, and a lot of these news articles, especially starting with the Cold War, started to accumulate. So I'm thinking to myself, how would you take over a country that wasn't obvious? How would you take over a country without anybody noticing? So that's how 24 Sussex Drive came
Oh,
about.
that's great. I love the description of that. Thank you so much for adding that. Now, Sharia, as authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative criticism of your books if you've ever had one
Right.
in the past?
Well, again, starting with my journalism, there was rarely an article that I did where the editor didn't, take their red pen and go, well, this has to go or this has to change. So it's not that you own something. It's not about you. It's about what you're writing. And so I approached my fiction the same way. And so the important part for anybody writing anything is a second pair of eyes.
Hmm.
Three, maybe four is even better, but I've got a couple of beta readers who are fantastic. And so I rely on them to say, what were you thinking with this paragraph? Or this doesn't make sense. Or who's this character and why are they there? So it gives you another perspective. And writers, and you know this, they have to be open and keep, that's where creativity
It's all
and
about.
the actual mechanics of writing
Hmm.
meet. Yes, you can be creative, but if you're not conveying what you're trying to say effectively, then there's no point.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. I love the sound of that. Sharia, you're also the author of Dream Gate Grabbing Here. Without giving much information away also, could you tell us a bit about Dream Gate Grabbing Here?
Well, there's a mystery inside a mystery. How
Oh,
many times have you woken up from a dream and go, what is that about? Where did that come
I'm
from?
from.
And so uh, I wanted to sort of merge the mystery that we have about our dreams
Mm.
with a mystery, another mystery. And so in the research that I did, I found that Albert Einstein and this Institute for Advanced Study still exists, and he started it in the 1920s.
Mm.
And he was fascinated by two elements: one, dreams, and two, time. So, Dreamgate Grabbing Air also has a sequel, Dreamgate Grabbing Time. And so the characters follow in both books. And it's about a young woman who she and her cousin inherit a business in an old building from an aunt. And on the second floor is an apartment. And they are looking at maybe updating the apartment, but the walls on one side of a room are shorter than another side. And they discover a wall cavity. And there's the skeletal remains of a man who is obviously in 1920s dress
Mm.
and some art that disappeared during the Second World War.
Oh.
So, and then she starts having dreams about the man when he was alive. So there was one of the studies that they did at the Institute, and they called it a wormhole. And it was sort of between time and between, where you are awake and asleep and kind of a thing. So I just moved that into a gate. I said, well, what if there was a dream gate that we went through between awake and sleep? So
Mm.
I just went off from there.
That's great. I love the sound of that. It sounds very intriguing to me. Thank you
Well,
so
I
much
hope
for
so.
adding it. Yeah. I'm also curious, Sherry, to know if you experienced any challenges while writing your books. If there's any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Well, I can think of one big one as a woman, because
Mm.
most women who are writing find this. When I was writing for magazines and newspapers, it was always between, meals and taking somebody to soccer practice or piano practice, but when the kids got older, there was still this business of, well, you had to sort of fit in your writing between all your other tasks. And so, because I hate to say this, sorry, Peter, you're a man, sorry, but you don't have to stop maybe and cook meals, or clean the house kind of a thing. And it's a very typical, our culture
Mm,
globally, the same thing,
yeah.
that's one aspect. But I push through it regardless. And that's fine. The other aspect was I do a great deal of research with my fiction. That's important to me because I want my fiction to ring true. And I
Mm.
have readers who write to me via my website who say they're busy looking up places and situations and material because they never know what I've made up and what I've looked up. So,
Oh.
so I'm busy, so the research and making the research fit in with the plot that I've put together in my head.
Mm. That's great. That sounds very great. I really love the description of your books.
Well, they're interesting, all right, because my brain goes in other directions, and I'm sure you find yourself doing the same thing with your poetry and some of your prose too.
Mm.
And you're wondering yourself, where did that come from?
Absolutely. Sometimes I just see them just, did you really write all of this, Peter?
Yeah, right. Who really did write this?
That's great. Thank you so much, Sherry. You also have a book titled Come Sit in My Kitchen. I love that title. It sounds a bit curious. What's happening in her kitchen that she's invited me to come sit? But she want to give me food or something. I'd love you to love you to tell us
Well,
about that too.
it actually stems from two places. One, it was a poem that I wrote at my grandmother's funeral as a
Mm,
tribute to her.
mm.
And it was titled Come Sit in My Kitchen because she was continually cooking and inviting people, to join her always. She had a boarding house during the Depression. And I grew up hearing stories from her and my dad and my uncle and my Aunt Margaret about the interesting characters who lived in the house and people who, I mean, the dining room was filled with people all the time eating, kind of a
Oh, wow.
thing. And so, one of the stories that intrigued me about that time was between the First and Second World War, one of her boarders disappeared, and they never really knew what happened to this person or where they went. And I won't give away what they were. But between the First and Second World War, German spies were big, huge in Canada and United States. And so the research I did for that era, along with the family stories, it kind of took off on its own.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love the sound of that too. Now, Sherry, apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or currently working on?
One that also won an award, an Independent Press Award,
Beautiful.
was as a result of listening years and years ago. Sometimes a lot of my plots sort of ferment over time,
Mm.
but this one was a BBC radio program that I listened to in the car called Born a Girl. And it was about uh, uh, a look at the cultures starting from Africa and how they spread to the rest of the world, but how women were kind of like shunted aside globally in every culture. They were important for the home, but not given voice as far as government or commerce. And I thought, that is interesting. Why is that? Where did that start? So I started research back and went back, oh gosh, archaeological books, research about 12,000 years. And so
Oh,
that's where the premise for the Count of Baldpate started.
oh, wow.
And so there is a murder at the Baldpate Inn in Colorado,
Oh,
and all of the clues go back further in time.
oh, that's great. I so much love the sound of that. That's very amazing. Now, is there anything that you love to share with the viewers concerning your books that we haven't mentioned in this interview, and I'd love the viewers to know?
Uh, and as you know, uh, when you launch, when you think I want to write, you have to ask yourself, why am I writing? And it has to be something where you say to yourself, well, I can't not write. Whether it's poetry,
Mm,
whether it's short stories, whether it's novels or novellas. Who am I writing for and why?
mm,
And if this is a passion of yours, whether you are a mechanic, whether you're a hairdresser, whether you're a dentist, and you write in your spare time, your ultimate goal is to write and reach other people.
absolutely.
So you never give up on it. It's not an easy industry
Mm,
to work in, and you don't go to college, graduate, get a job, and they pay you, and you have a nice pension. And so people going into the arts, whether you're painting, whether you're sculpting, whether you want to act or go into commercials, or whether you want to write, anything in the arts really will test you. And all I can say for anybody who wants to write, you just keep writing and you never, ever quit.
oh, great. Thank you so much for that. I love your advice. It's very great to be.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sherry, where can readers get a copy of your book in case of other people who would love to get a copy? Where can we purchase a copy?
Well, probably the easier place to start is because all of the titles are there, is on my website, and it's patchworkpublishing.com.
Okay.
And Patchwork Publishing is all in lowercase, all one word. And then on the website, all the tabs will show you where everything is. And you just click on the book cover and it takes you to Amazon.
Well, that's great. And I've actually left a link in the discussion part of this interview for viewers who would love to get a copy of Sherry's books directly. So thank you so much, Sherry, for accepting the invitation to be featured on English Literature. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, Peter, thank you. This was fun, and I really appreciate it. And also enjoyed your poems.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that too.